Hello, in this episode we're going to be looking at the basics of getting started with adventure mode. Now, adventure mode is a huge topic. It's an entire mode of gameplay, and just like trying to wrap up how to play the fortress mode in one episode would be doing it a disservice. It's the same with adventure mode. There is so much to know and learn, so this episode is going to give you just enough to get you going so that you can get into adventure mode and start playing and start learning. So the first thing you want to do is to create a new world as you would if you were going to play a new fortress mode game. If you have a world where you've already played a game before and you don't have an active adventurer or you don't have an active fortress, maybe it's a fortress that withered away or that you retired, you can now go into that in adventure mode. You can choose that world to start playing in instead of creating a new world. It works just as well and can lead to some interesting gameplay. And the footage that I'm going to be showing you here is from my return to Painted Road, the evil ruin, where I attempted an embark at reclaiming a ruin, which ended badly, and then we went into an adventure mode. If you want to follow that story and the story of the characters that you'll see some of the creation of here today, then check out my Let's Play series, The Tale of Three Cities. Once you have your new world, choose Start Playing, select the world you want to play in, and then select Adventurer. So the first thing that'll happen is 15 days will pass. We're then brought to this screen. It's the character creation screen. You can create up to 6 characters for your party. Now, this is not obvious, but the first thing you want to do is to select your status, either peasant, hero, or demigod. You change the status using the plus or minus key. That changes the number of points that you'll be given to allocate to the attributes, skills, and equipment for each of your characters. Particularly for your first playthrough, I would recommend demigod. Other than the number of points, it doesn't change anything else. The next thing to do is to select the race, the species of the character that you want to play. The list that's offered to you will depend not only on the world that you've generated, but also the history of the world that you've generated. So some of the necromancer's creations that you see here, like Nish's warrior, those creatures were created by a necromancer called Nish. And so they didn't exist as a creature until after Nish had been born and had become a necromancer and had started creating those creatures. If you select Intelligent Wilderness Creature, it will give you a second menu with a list of additional creatures. There are pros and cons to each of the individual species. The necromancer creations in particular come with all kinds of weird and wonderful and quite random attributes and abilities. So yeah, experiment, have fun. But I would recommend taking one character with you who can fly. I chose to take an intelligent wilderness creature who was an eagle person in my group. You'll then be asked, which civilization does your character come from? This is unique to both the species that you've chosen and also the world that you've generated. It will affect your choice of starting location. Now we get into the background of your character, and in the bottom right of the screen you'll see some options related to the name and the gender of your dwarf. It's G to change your gender, and E, C or R to change your name. Now select your home. Using the up and down arrow keys, you'll get a little description of each of the home locations that are available to that particular character. Your choice of home will affect your choice of starting locations. Choose the place that you fancy and then press enter to select that. It's not sticky, so it won't change until you've pressed enter. Then use the left arrow to select your occupation. Most of the occupations don't affect your gameplay, but there are a couple that give you additional skills, and probably the best one to go for, especially as a beginner, is Ranger. Ranger will give you some useful additional starting skills for free. You use the up and down arrow keys to find Ranger and then press enter to make it stick. Right arrow key to select beliefs. Most characters that I've created don't have any beliefs. Press Y for next and it takes you to the skills and attributes. The attribute points and the skill points are unique to each category. They're not shared across each other, and you want to try and spend as many of those points as possible. This character setup here is for a pure fighter build where the character is trained in using a whip, but this character can fly, so I didn't need to put a point in swimming. It's usually recommended that you put skill points into swimming and reading to bring you up to being a novice in both of those. That'll help to prevent your character from drowning and will give them the ability to learn to read. You may also find it useful to take your character up to Novice Observer, as that's a skill that's quite hard to train and allows you to learn from other characters. If your creature's not a flying creature, you may also want to put skill points into climbing to bring them up to Novice Climber, just so that they can get down a tree when you find that they've climbed up a tree. To decide how to spend my attribute points, I referred to the Dwarf Fortress Wiki Adventure Mode. At the time of recording, quite a lot of this information is out of date, especially when it comes to character creation. But the information on attributes, as far as I'm aware, is still relevant. I put a lot of focus on toughness. I figured the longer we can survive, the more opportunity we'll get to get a strike on somebody in a fight. And not dying is going to be one of your early goals. I did want a character in my party who was a little bit more personable, so that they could develop some talking skills just in case I needed them. You might find that useful in your adventure run as well. Y for next, and then you can choose your appearance. This is mostly for flavour, although some people do think that if you have somebody who is, for example, broad-bodied, they may take more hits when they're fighting. Y for next, and this takes you to personality. This is less impactful than Fortress mode, but if you can meet all of their needs, then your character will obtain focus, and that will give them a buff to their gameplay. You can press F to completely modify exactly what you want, but probably at the start you don't want to get into that much detail. Maybe just press R to randomize until you don't get anybody with any strong needs, so moderate need being the highest, or only strong needs for things that you know you're going to be able to satisfy, such as the need to fight. Y for next takes you to the equipment screen, and if you press Y immediately, it'll take you to the pet screen, and at this point it gives you the option to add a new character to the party. I found it useful to add all of my characters before I started allocating the equipment points. Now, how many characters to add? You can add up to 6. The more characters you have, the more people you have to attack and defend in a battle. But a large party is frustratingly difficult to control. But I found that 6 was such a large party, it was almost impossible to keep the party together when I was travelling through the wilderness, in particular in wooded areas. 4 of my party were flyers, and the characters who can fly are particularly difficult to keep together with the rest of the group. From what I've learned, I would recommend just one flying creature, and that would be the creature that you control the majority of the time. When I was in battle, it was very rare that more than 4 people would be involved in the battle. So maybe 4 is a good starting number. You change between your characters using the tab key, and you can navigate between the different choices of each character using Y for next and escape to go back. But once you get to skills, don't go back any further because that will cancel the character. Now for equipment. Your equipment points are spread between the armor, weapons, other items and pets. I found it easier to select the pets that I wanted to take with me first. I've become a huge fan of yaks. Yaks are very tough. They are excellent fighters. They haul a lot of equipment for you and they're very aggressive. The muscular eye of Night Wrestler has been struck down. Kummel, the yak, dealt the final blow. Okay. But like with your party number, it's very hard to keep all of your yaks and all of your party together. So I had a party of 6 characters and 6 yaks. So that was 12 things, of which I could only control 6 of them. And 6 of them would go charging off to attack any wild creatures that we came across. So what would I recommend now? Probably a party of 4 and a party of 4 yaks, until you get to grips with things and find your personal preference and playstyle. So what equipment do you want to take? Well, in this playthrough that I'm showing you here, I had a very specific goal of taking a whole bunch of equipment to the location of Painted Road to drop it off there to use for a future embark. So I wouldn't recommend following what you see on the screen here. You're going to want to take some alcohol and a little bit of food, and then put the rest of your points into armor and weapons. The weapons that are available will vary between the civilizations that you've chosen, and so you might want one character to buy all of the weapons and another character to buy all of the armor, or say all of the boots for your party. Maybe one character buys your yaks and another character buys all of the alcohol. You can do this and then organise who's carrying what once you get to your starting location. Once you've spent all your points, you're ready to start the adventure and you need to choose your starting location. By using the up and down arrow between your characters, you can choose to start in any of the locations which are the home of one of those characters. Now, even at this point, you can still escape to go back and change any of the points allocations as far back as skills. I chose a particular location called Shake and Shot, which was a dwarven camp. That sounded interesting. And then we press Y for go. Okay, so Shake and Shot turned out to be an absolute nightmare because it was absolutely crowded with people and made it extremely difficult to gather together the things that I brought with me and to organise the stuff amongst my party members. Other things that you might want to consider is locations that have a lot of doors, such as dwarven fortresses, are probably something you want to avoid because getting a party of yaks through doors is frustratingly difficult. As soon as you do anything, your party will start to reorganise their possessions and they'll start chatting with each other, and any characters in your surroundings will start chatting with each other. This is a good place to pick up tips about quests that you might want to go on. Now at this point you probably find that pressing question mark is a very useful thing, particularly to get to the key bindings screen. You scroll using the arrow keys and it tells you all of the keys that you can press to do things, interact with things or view things. I use the key binding help screen an awful lot. So the first thing you're going to want to do is to organise your armour, weapons and equipment that you've brought. And I emptied my inventory for each person onto any yak that they were near. So it's P to put. You can also drop things on the ground. Be careful when you're dropping liquids, not to drop the liquid itself, but to drop the container that the liquid is in. At the moment, there is a glitch where if you drop a liquid, it creates an infinitely sized puddle of that liquid. So if you drop all of your alcohol, you can actually pick up more alcohol than you dropped. You can get things back from your yaks or from the ground by selecting G. If you're picking something up from the ground, the character that's picking it up has to be stood on that particular tile. If you're getting something from a yak, you need to be stood next to the yak. Your goal is to get everybody correctly equipped and to get their speed to 1.0. If they're carrying too much weight, their speed will drop below 1.0. That'll slow down their movement speed, make them more tired, and make combat more difficult and less successful for them. In this nightmare scenario, where dropping and picking things up was extremely difficult, even identifying which characters I was looking at was extremely difficult, I found that just making sure I'd picked everything up from the floor with somebody was the best way to go, and then I immediately fast travelled out of the area. To fast travel, you need to be away from the location that you're in. In my case, Shake and Shot was a very small location, which was lucky. It meant that I only needed for one person to be able to move a little bit away from the centre. It didn't matter that some of my party members were too heavy to move. And then it was Shift T to fast travel. When you fast travel, your party moves together as long as they were within the vicinity of each other when you entered fast travel. Not only does your pace move faster, but also time moves faster as well. You can walk into an ambush when you're fast traveling, so this was a bit risky because not all of my party had any weapons and not all of my party had any armor. I hadn't been able to organize things in the situation that I'd been in. The first couple of times I dropped out of fast travel, I found that some of my party members were in trees because I was in a jungle. So I had to fast travel a couple of times until I eventually dropped out of fast travel where all of my characters were on the ground next to each other, and so were the yaks. And each time I fast travelled, I just went one step or two. I didn't want to go far because I really wanted to get my party properly equipped before I risked running into something. In addition to P for put and D for drop and G for get, other useful keys are I to view your inventory and R to remove something that a party member is wearing or to get something out of a container like your backpack, and W to wear an item. And just because they've picked something up doesn't necessarily mean that they've equipped it. A useful thing to do early on in your gameplay is to press K and look around at the neighbouring tiles and see if you can find any rock pebbles on the floor. You want to pick up 2 rock pebbles. Your character will probably put the pebbles in a backpack, so press R and remove both pebbles from the backpack. Then press X and C for create. Select Make Sharp Rock. Select your first small rock and then your second small rock. And that'll give you a tool that you can use to cut things and butcher things. Particularly once you've killed a wild animal, you can butcher it for food. And then you're going to want to set out on your adventure and go and explore or set out on the quest that you've set for yourself. Pressing Shift Q will give you a list of all of the things that's happened to you, and will also give you a list of the rumours and things that you've heard about. If you fancy going on an adventure to either kill a thing or to recover an artifact from a location, this is a good place to remind yourself of the things that you've heard about. Shift QM will also show you a full map of the entire area that your joint party members have knowledge of. I found that moving in fast travel was significantly easier than travelling on the ground. Just keeping the party together is one of the biggest challenges of travelling on the ground. And if a party member or a yak either runs off or gets left behind, you can cause your party to regroup by fast travelling with Shift T. But if you have a party member or a pet that's too far away, they won't join you when you fast travel. You have to get back into range with them and get them back within the vicinity of the rest of your party before you can fast travel and have them rejoin you. Fast traveling is a good way to get out of trees, but you can't fast travel when you're inside the area of a location, and you can't fast travel when you're in mountain ranges. When you come to a large river in fast travel, it will automatically drop you out of fast travel. And if you want to drop yourself out of fast travel, you press D to stop. Oh, okay, we've discovered a river. That's nice. And wolves. Getting ambushed, particularly by wild creatures, is a thing, and not necessarily a bad thing. Combat is done on a turn-by-turn basis, where the speed of your characters and the enemy characters determine who gets which strike in first. Things can only melee attack things that they're stood next to. You can tab between your characters without anything happening in the game. Tab to the character that you want to attack with and press Shift A. This will give you the option of which creature you want to attack. Take care you don't attack a friend. Sometimes the character that you've selected won't be stood next to any enemies, and the only option you'll be given will be friendly combatants. Try not to attack a yak, you'll probably end up regretting it. So select the thing you want to attack, and then it will ask you if you want to strike it, which means to use a weapon, to wrestle it, or to dodge it. If you select strike, it'll ask you which part of the body you want to strike and how difficult it'll be to hit those parts of the body and how effective that strike will be. Choose the part of the body that you want to attack, and then it'll ask you which weapon you want to use. Head, neck and upper body shots are more likely to be lethal. Leg and feet shots are more likely to stop the creature from being able to run away or dodge you. And if you're fighting something with arms and hands, attacking arms and hands will make it a little more difficult for that creature to do you damage with the weapon that they're holding. And while you're attacking or dodging with the character that you're controlling, your other party members and the yaks will probably, hopefully, dive in and start doing what they think is best in their individual situations. The Pope strikes the Eye of Night wrestler in the right foot with his mule meat. I found that if I try to control a character that's more than 2 or 3 tiles away from an enemy, by the time I have moved that character into a position where they can fight, often the battle is already over. Once you've killed something, you can turn it into food. You stand on the tile of the corpse and press X and then B for butcher. Arrow key to the corpse that you want to butcher, and then select the tool that you want to butcher it with. Your characters will become hungry, thirsty and tired. To deal with hunger and thirst, press E and then select something in your inventory to eat or drink. You can drink blood splatter and rainwater that's on your body. And getting food is quite easy because not only will you end up battling a fair number of wild animals, but you can also pick plants that are around you and eat the plants as well. Getting fluids to drink is a little bit more difficult. So when you come across a river, if you've been drinking water from your water skin that you start with, it's a good idea to refill the water skins. There is a day-night cycle, and sunset and sunrise are marked with a red bar as you fast travel. As nighttime approaches, you can see less and less of the area around you. Asterisks on the screen, as you can see here, there's 2, one due north of the party and one to the northeast, indicate some sort of creature or party. Not necessarily hostile, but often hostile. You can sleep in the open. You press Shift Z to sleep, and you can choose D to sleep until dawn, W to wait in that location for 8 hours, or S to sleep for a specific number of hours. Rather than sleeping outdoors, you might want to find a local friendly establishment where you can shelter for the night. But in this case, you're going to need to talk to the person and to get their permission. It's K to talk, and then arrow key until your cursor is over the person that you want to talk to. There are numerous options and submenus within the menu of things that you can say to people. Other useful key presses to know: are less than and greater than to go up and down ramps and up and down in the air with your flying creature. H to hold, that allows you to climb something, particularly if you need to climb down out of a tree that you found one of your characters in. Z for status will allow you to inspect the health of your character and see any wounds that you have. And Shift S will show you the speed at which your character is travelling at. Normally you would want to keep this at a normal walk or normal fly speed, as they can get quite tired if they're sprinting or flying fast. Another thing to keep an eye on is if you have two characters that pass over the same tile, one will crouch or lie down to pass over the top of another. Characters that you're not directly controlling will automatically stand up by themselves, but if the character that you're controlling is on the ground, they'll stay on the ground. Even if they're flying, they'll stay lying down until you tell them to stand up, and you do that by pressing S. Stand up. So that's all for this tutorial. It is just the basics to get you going. Remember to use the question mark to look at your key bindings and all of the options that you have. Explore, play around with it, have a few attempts at it until you find your particular playstyle. There is so much more to adventure mode. You can claim sites, you can build things, you can build buildings for yourself, you can join other parties. Well, that's about all I can squeeze into this episode. Thank you for watching. Bye for now. You can get a really good shot on the head. Do it with your whip. Fabulous. Now you see, isn't that better than using your water skin?